Good afternoon, and welcome to the session about cost management and how it has been redefined in Microsoft Dynamics AX. My name is, as stated here on the slide, it's Anders Evind-Kirke, and I'm a senior program manager in Microsoft. I'm working out of Denmark, where the whole supply chain is sitting. So what I want to demonstrate today is really how we have actually changed the whole UI of cost management in Microsoft Dynamics AX. And I've made a little agenda here, and this is the second slide and my last slide of the whole presentation, because I normally want to show what I've done, not just demonstrate it or document it on a slideshow. So what I want to go through in this session is actually the master data. How have we changed the master data look from a cost management point of view? Meaning that the cost controllers will get a much easier look at the system. The consultants configuring the system will get it much easier to actually do their job. The next topic I want to touch is how we work with predetermined cost. And predetermined cost is really how do we do our budgeting costing. We have done some improvements here. I know one of the improvements that I will show you is really loved by the TAP customers. How many in the room here have already been in the TAP program and looked at AX, the new AX? Only a few of you. But there's some exciting new stuff within the predetermined cost that I want to demonstrate. A long-lasting feature has been implemented. Then I will go into inventory accounting and display how we are actually doing inventory accounting now from a visibility standpoint. Because I can already now stress out the calculation of cost is exactly the same as in 2012. There is no change to the way we do calculation of cost. But the visualization of everything has changed in Dynamics AX. And the same applies for manufacturing accounting. We have built a new visualization to the manufacturing accounting that will allow you to do much more insight than what you've ever been able to do before in AX. Then I will go to workspaces because the cost management area have now 2 workspaces available in Microsoft Dynamics AX. And I want to go through what we have done in these workspaces, why we have added this information, and what you can get out of these information. And why they are important for the cost controller so he can take action on the system and the performance of the system, in this case, the company. And lastly, I will go through Power BI, because the cost management team is, as I understand it, still the only team that will actually ship a content pack when we RTW. A content pack is that the application team deliver a set of measurements and an OData feed that can be used in Power BI as a content pack with charts and predefined measurements that the Power BI team of Microsoft will then ship. So we are not shipping it as the cost management team in AX. We will hand it over to the Power BI team, and they will then ship it into their market space. But once we have that content pack and it is applied by the customer, we can actually insert these tiles, these KPIs, from Power BI into workspaces in Microsoft Dynamics AX. So the benefit is really there that I can, in native AX BI, build a chart to show some information. And what I've talked with customers about is really that, and I'm not being offensive again, older accountants and cost controllers, but they like statements. They really like the statements. But other accountants, they actually like charts, for instance, to show the same information. If I need to build it in native AX, I need to build a strong, I need to actually pick the visualization chart that we are using, and it's fixed in code, where by using the Power BI, just by providing the measurements to the user, I will allow you to define the visualization and insert it into the dashboard of the single user. So the flexibility is much bigger. Yes, it gives you that you have to do a few steps to get that visualization in, but at least you have the self-service reporting capabilities then for free. But I will show all of that during the session. And I will actually jump forward and backward to this PowerPoint. So let's jump directly into AX. So what I have here is AX in the newest version. And right now I'm logged in as administrator, and it looks a little bit heavy with all these workspaces. Of course, that is not the truth in reality, because based on security, you will only have a limited set of workspaces. But right now, I have to be logged in as administrator to be able to show all of the stuff I want to show. We have the burger menu out here, and if we go out here, we will actually also see all the modules that are in AX. And I don't know how many were in the keynote that Dan Brown and Sri did, but the newest part is really in AX, is now that we have cost management as a module. And you will also see just above that there's something called cost accounting. This is really because this is a newer build in RTW, and that is why this is not a build that is shipped to the customers, because there you will not see cost accounting. So cost accounting as such is discontinued in RTW of Microsoft Dynamics AX, but we are already building, so this module is actually a complete new cost accounting module that we're building right now. So that's why you see it on my box here. So not to confuse you, it is not in RTW, but we are building already a complete new cost accounting module. But what I want to emphasize here is cost management is now considered a module and domain area of itself in Microsoft Dynamics AX. And what we have been doing is that we have actually moved all of the links to forms and features that has anything to do with costing, either inventory accounting or manufacturing accounting, into this module, which should make it a lot easier to find and navigate through the system as being a cost controller. So we have inventory accounting, where we have the release products, the closing, adjustment, revaluation for moving average, and costing versions. Manufacturing accounting, and then we have the manufacturing accounting policy setup, and we have the inventory accounting policies setup. And the setup is really important. And if I go to inventory accounting setup, and we go to parameters, because really there were nothing called inventory accounting parameters before. And honestly, this form is just a skin on top of the data structure already in AX. So don't be scared that we have created new forms with new labels, because the tables behind these forms are exactly the same as in the past. There is no upgrade requirement as such at all. So what I've been doing here is I put all of the parameters that actually goes into inventory accounting in AX. And we have also created a few new ones. But really the benefit here is that if you look at these two fields here, for instance, post-product received in Ledger, that was normally placed under accounts payable parameters. So you would have to know as a cost controller to do inventory accounting configuration correctly how you want to account to GL for your inventory. You will have to jump between different modules. Now we have moved it into this form. It's still in the same table as it was in the past, but from a user standpoint, we have moved it into a visualization layer that it is in part of cost management. So if you can still go to the old form and update it as well. It's a one-to-one. As soon as you update it in the old form, where the field is always also available, it will automatically update in this form as well. Another thing I want to demonstrate is if I go to the item model groups form under inventory accounting, we have also tried to restructure some of the forms a little bit when you open it in the context of being a cost controller. So when you're opening item model groups from one of our links, the form looks different than if you're opening up inventory model groups from being an inventory manager. Because even though that in AX it is still the same table we are looking at, the information that I want to see is different. So again, here we have put costing method and cost recognition at the top of the form, for instance, and we have also renamed a few of the labels a little bit. I still need all the inventory policies because potentially I have two different inventory accounting inventory models that is called FIFO. I need to know why I have two for FIFO. One can be that I actually have negative inventory, or I have potentially allowing quarantine management on that. So I need to still know why I have these. So that's why the inventory policies, as I call them, are still visible when you're opening up as a cost controller. A little new thing here is that often it has been asked which items are actually associated with which inventory model. And this is what we can now do by actually clicking related items here. So let's go to, let's say, FIFO and press related items. And it will actually now open up the release products in a filtered form on all the items that is associated with this item model group. And the same will actually apply for resource groups, and it will also apply for the dimension groups and so on. All the configuration groups that we have now have a related item, a related resource capability to look up how is that actually associated. A little help for the users to figure out what has happened in the system. What have we else done under master data? If we go to the inventory ledger integration, we now have something called parameters here as well. And the only thing we have here is a group called cost reconciliation. And we will allow the user to select two types of reconciliation, or two principles for reconciliation. You can either choose main account category, or you can use main account. And if you use main account, you will have to insert total accounts into this. And if you use main account categories, you will insert main account categories from the general ledger. What you'll do is that you will associate a specific main account category, as my principal is main account category, that is equal to my inventory in the subledger. So this is the way I'm now going to actually help you do your reconciliation afterwards, because now we have a steady form in the parameters where you're defining the relationship. And I can do the same for WIP. And I will show in a few seconds how we're actually going to use that multiple places in the system. Sorry. So the next thing I want to show within configuration and master data is really if I go to my postings. The thing to notice here is really that we have actually changed a lot of the labels on the postings. So now it's called cost of goods sold delivered instead of packing slip. And it's now called cost of units invoiced instead of called packing slip offset, I think we call it. Oh, sorry, that was this one. Cost of goods sold delivered, which was actually the packing slip offset. And what we have also secured is, because I found out doing an investigation that in many places, the posting type and the ledger posting type was not equal to each other, actually. So it made it really difficult that you had a ledger posting type that says one word, but when you configure the account in the forms from the subledger, they were not using the same names either. It really made it difficult. So now everything has been cleaned up, so we're using the same labels, and we have also made the labels more easy to understand. And we have worked with a set of customers and partners to agree on the labels, because it's always difficult to agree on labels. But this is a compromise that all of us agreed on in the group. And also if we go to purchase, we have also changed it. So on the purchase side, it's called cost of purchase materials received, and it's going to be called cost of purchase materials invoiced. And if we go to production, we also had significant change here. So instead of picking list and picking list offset, we now have estimated cost of materials consumed and estimated cost of materials consumed WIP. And this terminology here we see with estimated cost. And when we go down here to the financial one, which is cost of materials consumed, is actually going to be used also for resources. So we have also updated the resources and the indirect cost to follow the same guidance in my label definition. So it should be easier for everybody to understand what we're meaning now. So if we go back here on the purchase, and I want to create a new one here. And we will say all, it doesn't matter. And I will go here and I will open up my account selection. What you will see here is the system is actually only proposing me to select 2 accounts out of my general ledger selection. Why? Well, we know from the system that this posting type relates to inventory. And now because I've in my reconciliation form, parameter form, already have specified the relationship between the accounts and the subledger, I will pre-filter the ledger accounts that you can select for this posting type. It works 99% of the time, because the problem in AX is really sometimes that we're using the same posting type for 2 different things depending on subcontracting, not subcontracting, and so on. So it's helping in 99% of the cases to secure that you don't configure the system wrong. You will still be able to click here, show all, and then it will show all accounts, because in some cases you will have to violate this validation rule that we have added. So it is not secured that you have to select one of these accounts. It's just to help you that this is what you normally should select, and unless if you really know what you're doing, you can select another account, of course. Sorry. So that was really all the stuff, not all, but the one I wanted to show you about the configuration that we have actually been doing in AX. The next topic I want to touch is actually predetermined cost. Because predetermined cost is also sometimes misunderstood. I see that from some of the customer escalations that we are getting, that they believe that predetermined cost really only relates to standard cost, which is not true. Predetermined cost should always be calculated also when you're doing actual cost. And because if you go negative inventory, which we do support in AX, this is the cost we go to. And also when you're doing manufacturing accounting for variances, which is something I will show that now we can actually do variance calculations for actual cost. We don't post them, but we can display the variances to the users. It's very important that you actually have a predetermined cost when you're doing actual cost on your manufactured goods. So, just to tell you, I really encourage everybody to always have a predetermined cost, even though they're doing actual cost on all the produced and purchased items. But I often see that it is not the case. Let's jump back into AX and see what we've been doing on the predetermined cost. Oh, the wrong one. This one. No, that was the one. This was right. Predetermined cost. We will go into the costing versions. One thing also very important is that we actually have two costing version forms. I know that it was not that visible in the past because one was actually placed on the inventory accounting setup, or inventory management in setup under costing, and one was actually under manufacturing and BOM. There is a big difference in the two because one is called costing version setup, where you actually can define the policies of the costing version, and the other one is only maintenance of the cost. I already have a few customers coming in on AX in the TAP program saying that they go into the costing version form up here under inventory accounting and they want to be able to create a new costing version. It will not allow you to do that because the form was only intended to actually maintain your predetermined cost, not to create a policy of a new costing version. But in the demo here, I already have my costing versions. But anyway, I will go to the policy setup. And you can see the form is also having it in the name of it. So the first thing I want to go is to my compare costing version here. So we actually shipped in 2012 R3 this price compare report, where you can actually in a SSIS report compare prices calculated between the active cost and a planned cost for the future and compare them. Which was a good report, and it really makes sense. The idea was that some people saying, well, we don't necessarily want to print it because it takes time to print and stuff like that. Can we get something faster? And I only want to compare this price against an active price. I don't want to compare multiple ones, and therefore executing this report takes time. So what we've been doing is really try to focus if we can actually improve that process a bit. So what I have here is a costing version where I have a few calculated prices. And you can also see this form now in Microsoft Dynamics AX has also been optimized. There's fewer tabs and so on to actually look at. There's not a double tab section here. There's only pending prices and active prices. We have also renamed the labels up here a little bit to make it easier. But anyway, if I want here and go and view calculation details of my mid-range speaker here, I have my calculated cost here. And also in this form, we have actually also made it easier. Because in the past, it was actually pretty difficult to figure out what the calculation actually did. And this is what we are trying to improve here by actually putting this calculation factor per unit. So here now you can always read from the left to the right and understand how the cost price is calculated. Because you will have the cost, you will have the consumption per lot size, the cost per lot size quantity, and therefore cost by unit. So now you can always read this direction. The fields was actually there in AX. It was just hidden on another tab. So it's not even something that we have done now. All the information was in AX 2012. It was just about putting the fields into the right order. So this is what we have been doing, really. But anyway, I want to compare this calculated price, because if I want to understand what has changed on this budgeted price for next year versus the current active one, I now have a button up here called Compare to Active Cost. And when I click this one, a dialog will open up, and I will get a chart component here, or a grid component, depending on how I want to work. And I can actually drill in both of them. If we start here with the grid, I can actually drill in and see where is the price difference occurring. Because normally I don't want to know it at the lowest level to start with, if I care about the lowest level. Really depending. So instead of just exploding all the 200 lines on a bomb and say, go figure out where the difference is, we will gradually allow you to dig in where it's important. We can also go to the chart, because again, depending on the user, we don't know which utilization you want to use. But if you want the chart, you can see the cost difference here in total based on the indirect, direct materials, and direct manufacturing. And we can actually zoom in on this, and we can see that the majority of the difference here, which is even good because it actually costs less now than what it did before, we can see here that it actually relates to direct materials. Okay, let's say in this case I want to investigate it. I simply click, and the system drills in. So now I can see which material cost groups actually is part of this. I'm still not at the materials itself, because I potentially will never even go there. But I can actually select that I want to see, because here we can see one material group actually gets more expensive now, and another material group gets actually less expensive. I want to know, why do we get more expensive? So I click this one, and it will actually show me the exact materials that actually cause the cost difference and how much it is for this specific product. And if I want to compare, I can actually go directly to the active cost as well and see it. Sorry, it's really dry up here. So this is one way of actually getting insight into your predetermined cost calculations in a very fast way. What else have we been doing? Well, I know for a fact that we have had an issue that customers has complained about for a long time, is that they would like to actually import prices into the system. Which I completely understand. The problematic has really been that we are working with a set of dimensions. And to optimize the database, it has been decided in the architecture 20 years ago that it was nice to create it into an ID, that combination, which is the InventDim ID. So in the user interface, we ask you to give us the dimensions, but everything is stored at an InventDim ID. And it was impossible to import the prices because we wanted you to insert the InventDim ID that you have absolutely no idea about how to define. So the beauty is really now we have data entities, because data entities is really the bridge between these two communications, that now we can actually, to the user, to the interface, allow them to insert the information that the user sees, and then actually, at the same time, insert it into the database at the database optimal form, or let's say not optimal in this case, because it's not, but the way it was intended in the data model at least. So this is a pretty cool tool, and we have actually created a specific data entities for the prices. And if you click the little office icon here, we will actually see here that we have different possibilities specifically for item prices. So we have one here where you can actually say pending and active item prices are read-only. And this means that you can actually export them to Excel, but you cannot update it in the Excel. And then I have one here called, this one is by default when you have a data entity, we are getting this. It's a little bit, but we cannot remove it from the framework, it says. So this one down here is pending item prices for USMF. So you can click this one, and then it will actually open up in Excel. And I've already done this just to save a few time. So what it is really that you will get up in Excel via Microsoft Data Connector that you will actually be able to insert prices now. So let's say I have a few items I want to insert prices for. And again, just because everybody goes wild on this, one of the things you need to be really cautious about is that the prices you insert here should be your raw material prices. You cannot insert calculated prices because then you will lose your BOM level calculation and stuff like that. Only insert your base prices of your raw materials. All the calculation of the level of calculation of production has to happen with inside AX still. So either you insert purchase prices or you insert cost prices. Let's say cost because I don't use the costing sheet in this case. So I can insert cost prices. So I do that. No from date. I will put it in for site number 1. Price 100 for 1. USMF. So the beauty is as well here is I can actually use and do this for any company I want to do it for. So another thing here is you can actually push prices to multiple legal entities within one Excel sheet. This is pretty powerful when we go to sales prices. So let's say I want to control sales prices globally. So I can calculate the sales prices in my manufacturing company, figure out what the sales price is by my standard margin, and I can actually now, as long as I know the costing version, this is really important, I need to know the costing version out here. So if I create the same costing version in the two legal entities, because that is legal entity bound, but I can call it the same name even in the two legal entities, then I will be able to push prices from the same Excel sheet to these two legal entities when I publish it. Pretty powerful. So here again, I will put cost in here on the second raw material, also for site 1. USMF. And this is one of the beauties with Excel is that, let's say I want to copy this to site number 2. I can simply copy the lines. Blah, blah, blah. Come on. Copy. Insert. And I will change this to this site 2. And site 2 should also have these prices. And I can now say publish. And why does it say it has an error? Let me see here. Identification error. Why would it come in an identification? No, it's... Yeah, the problem is I probably left the Excel open from yesterday. I don't know if it likes that one. Bugger. I thought I could leave it open from yesterday. Probably I cannot. I probably lost the connection to my user here. But the whole idea is really that you have the flexibility by data entities to import the prices. Here, going to sign in. Yes. Oh, what is the password? 3. Oh. I remember the password. Well, I remember the password at least. Yes, retrieving metadata, fine.
So is something similar to trade agreements?
Not to my knowledge, no. They only have the standard demo, the standard data entity right now. So let's select it pretty quick here. Cost. We won't do the one with the copy and everything else, just so you're sure that it actually works. I'm not talking something that is not truly working. 100, price 1. USMF. Publish. So now it says published successfully. And if I go back into my AX form and I refresh it, I have actually imported a price directly from my data entity. And again, so this makes the maintenance a lot easier for prices, especially if you get a complete product catalog from one of your suppliers and say, please, this is all the components that you can order from us, and this is your catalog. Yes?
Is there a possibility to update cost price from, for instance, a trade agreement purchase price?
There is no way of doing it through the trade agreement. You can actually export a trade agreement into Excel, and then you can copy it in here. Yeah.
This is still a pending price. Can I, in the Excel app, make it an active price?
No, no. The whole activation still happens within AX. So you can only work, you can export active prices, but whenever you import anything, it can only go into pending prices. Yeah. The whole data security in that sense happens within, in AX. So that was the second topic about predetermined cost, and I can see I have to hurry up a little bit here. So now we go into inventory accounting. And on inventory accounting, we have really made a huge push on the UI. And what we are trying to do in Dynamics AX is now we want to separate the whole understanding of inventory management and cost management into two different disciplines, which has not been the case in AX before. So some of the stuff that I will show you is completely new forms from a cost controller standpoint. They still work on this old data, and you can still go back and look at the old way if you like that better. We have not removed any of the capabilities, but we have built new forms, we are building new and using new terminology. And some of the terminology I'm using in Microsoft Dynamics AX right now will also be the one we are using in the new cost accounting module, because eventually cost accounting module will take over the whole cost management of AX. And when we do that, there is no relation between inventory management or production in AX and cost management at all. It is completely separated into the data structures as well. But let's go in and look at the inventory accounting in AX now. This one. So the first thing I will do is actually go into one of my workspaces, just to also, because this is the natural point where the users will go in. I won't use time right now to explain each of them. I will go through that when we get to the workspaces. But I want to go to some release products. And also again here, when we go to a release product here, again the form has been optimized from the controller standpoint. So we are only showing the relevant information as in the view of a cost controller on the product. And I will go down here to my cost entries item. I call it exactly what I'm going to show here, just so I can find it. We have a tab up here called Manage Cost. When I click this one up here, we can see some field groups. And what we can see here is that we will allow you to see cost transactions. Either you can see transactions or cost entries. And cost entries is the new terminology that I'm starting using. So we want to use a new terminology called cost entries and not transactions. I'll come to that in a few seconds, what the difference is. Then you have standard cost transactions. So if the item were a standard cost-based item, I will directly from this form, be able to open up standard cost transactions filtered to this item. It was actually not possible in HEX 2012. You have to go to the inquiry and then filter on the item itself, which was pretty difficult and a little bit annoyance. The new stuff we really added here is under costing. So now we have a new terminology again called cost objects. And this is something that is really important in Microsoft Dynamics AX and going forward. Because what is the definition of a cost object? Right now in Microsoft Dynamics AX, a definition of a cost object is the product plus all of the inventory dimensions that are financially tracked. That's the current definition. It will change because when we're going forward, a cost object can be many, many, many different things. Actually, anything that accumulates cost. But for now, cost object is in the only sense implemented in AX as the product / the inventory financial dimensions. So it also means when I open up here, the system already knows which cost objects exist for this item. If you looked at the old on-hand form, you could select you had to select dimensions. You could even saw registered quantity, you saw ordered quantities, and all of this. That had absolutely nothing to do with costing. It confuses a lot of users to understand how much inventory do I actually have on this item. They saw physical cost and financial cost amount and so on, which also confused a lot of people because actually most people don't even know what it means. And I really understand them. I have some. So for now, it's very easy. This is what you see. You have your cost entry product. the cost objects listed down here. In this case, it's only per site, and I only have one combination that actually has on hand. And it says, you have 100 pieces. I really don't care if they're physical received or financial received. I just have 100 pieces that I own as inventory asset. And the value is approximately 11,000, and the average unit cost is 108. I don't need more information as a cost controller. This is what I have. This is what I can go and find in GL, because this is what is posted to GL. Of course, I can have multiple dimensions that are part of my cost object definition, and I might want to aggregate it up on the cost objects. So we still have the dimension display button here, but if I click this one, you will actually see that it is limited to only allow you to remove the dimensions that are financially active on this. So you will never be able to go and select warehouse and see that you have 0 quantity on warehouse something at a cost of something. Because this is what InventTrans from a costing perspective can end up with, but from a cost object perspective, it never existed. So this is really truly important. And what I'm saying here is probably just more confusing. It's much simpler the way it is here, because you will never come into these confusing situations that we did in the past. What if I want to know the value of one of my warehouses? Good question. Because, of course, you might want to know the value of one of your warehouses. And you can get that by clicking the physical quantity button here. Because then the system also knows which physical values you have. And it will actually open up at that level. And the beauty here is now is that these values, so we find that on site 1, on warehouse 11, we have the 95 pieces. The value is now not based on InventTrans anymore. It's a calculation of the average unit cost on the cost object. Because on the InventTrans for this combination of site warehouse, I would never reach this value potentially, unless I'm standard cost really. Because costing is running at a different level than the warehouses. So the costing is not working on the same level, and that means all the transactions are completely differently operated. So now the value here is a calculation of the average unit cost, taking from the cost object used to calculate down on the physical level. It's really that simple. And again, if you have more physical dimensions, let's say I have location or pallets or whatever, again, I have the dimension button, which allow me to remove only the physical dimensions, because I'm looking at physical levels to figure out what is the value of this physical location level.
Does that mean we'll have a report which ties to quantity, ties to the GL value? That way, for auditors, you can have quantity where it is sitting, which location, which warehouse, and ties to the financial. Because it is challenging in previous work.
I know, and eventually, yes, but you will not have it now. But eventually you will have it, yes. But there's nothing yet, yeah. I will show you the only level of reconciliation we have still later on. But good question, yes, but no. So the next button that is really new is the cost entries. And this is really something really beautiful in my mind compared to what we have had before. So these are the postings on this product, or this cost object, sorry. I have to say cost object. So here I have posted a purchase order, product receipt, on the date of 21. I purchased 100 pieces at a value of 9,000, approximately 800. On the 22nd, I did an invoice. It costed a little bit more, approximately 1,000 kroner more. The price has changed. So what you see here is a form where there's only one quantity field, one amount field. No physical quantity, physical amount, financial quantity, financial amount, and so on. Because now we have made a new form that will, in chronological order, display the cost entries as they occur. That means also you will be able to filter on the value of a purchase order, which in this case would be the 41, and figure out what was the value in total of this purchase order. And the last one here of the 50 is actually a settlement. This means this is a charge that I've posted after the invoice on this purchase order. So this form looks not only on InventTrans, but it also adds the inventory settlements into a chronological transaction order. Another beauty really is, now in this case, it doesn't use cell numbers, but let's say I created cell number as physical tracking because I need to know each cell number that I actually move around in my inventory. I don't care about costing per serial number. So if I purchase 100 serial numbers, you will get 100 InventTrans. Here, you will get 1 with the 100, because I don't care about the physical one. Good question. That's my next point. So if you transfer between warehouses, in this case, I didn't care about the warehouses. They are not shown. All the word transactions that you see in InventTrans are not shown. I only show transactions that actually contribute cost. What? No, transfer orders do not, depending on what level of dimension you're doing it at. Yes. Yes. Well, then you have to. You will have to go and update, because if you do it between warehouses and you add cost. Today we say as soon as the cost is identical, we will remove it. So if you have a functionality that goes beyond that, of course you need to update the way we are filtering. No. No. I know. And when we get there, of course, as soon as we increment cost, it will always go in as a cost entry. But we don't support it yet. Fair valid. But if I transfer between sites and I actually in standard cost incrementally cost, you will see that that difference goes in here, of course.
I can make a transfer order between two warehouses using the TMS and actually adding costs, shipping costs on that transfer order between two warehouses. By using standard TMS, is that not shown if I put charges on that?
No, the transfer order with TMS, standard AX, do not add cost. No. There were some code of miscellaneous charges, but it never posted any cost. I know that FullScope has something on top of that that actually does it, but in standard AX, it doesn't. So if we go back, you can still, if you don't like the new way of looking, you can still go back to the transactions here. And if you look here, you will actually see exactly the same transactions in InventTrans that was posted on this item in this format here. And here you will see the transfer of my 5 pieces from the 2 warehouses here. It's just a query on top. It's not a new table, no. Yes, everything is supported in this.
The quantities, obviously in that example that you showed us, there was no quantity on the invoice.
No, there is never any quantity on invoices, because you already have received the goods. And I only from a quantity standpoint, look at the quantity 1 into inventory as an asset. All invoices can only incrementally add cost. They can never add quantity.
If the invoice is for multiple receipts, you're still displaying simply on a certain chronological order.
Yes.
You're not necessarily linking anything on
No.
that.
No. Again, there's a big difference what costing cares about and what operational and inventory really cares about. It's really important that we separate what we need. I have the link between return lot and lot, so we can see if there's any cost relationship actually between the transactions. That one I have in the new form as well. So, the next topic I really want to topic, let me see, my time here is running for me. I will go back to my item here is, once you are on your cost object, you also want to know how is your cost object performing. This is really important. And we've actually also improved that capability of the system. So if we go again to manage cost, now here on my new item here, I will go to cost objects. We have a new button called inventory statement and KPIs. I can click that when I'm standing on this object here. And what you will see here is actually an inventory statement of this item for the current period. So this is new to AX, and it actually shows you I had a beginning balance before 1st of February of 1,000 pieces at the value of 200,000. I can now see the net sourcing that is actually flowing into my inventory in the February month, and I can see that we have purchased 200 pieces. I can see that there were no manufactured costs because, again, this is a raw material in this case, potentially. I can see that under the net usage, that we have actually sold, or at least outflowed, 1,065 pieces. I can see the value of the outflow. I can see the classification of the outflow and see disposed, 15 pieces. And we have sold 1,050 pieces, giving me an ending balance of 135 and an ending balance of my inventory as of today. I can change the period easily in this graph. So I can simply go up here and say, I want to see this as of the 1st of January. And it's very responsive, because all of this is working for this specific cost object, and this is why it's so fast, really. So everything is narrowed down in the query to this specific object, and this is why it's so fast. So if we go back again at the February, so not only can you actually see, let's see, 1st of February here, you can also use date intervals, which is much easier because then it just flows per each month, which is really simpler. But anyway, I actually have a chart here which will show you the last 6 months progress of the item. And again, you see the classification that we have here. So similar to the statement that is in a statement format for the current period, you can see the last 6 months periods in a graph. So here I can see, if I look here, okay, in January, yes, we purchased the $200,000 amount. I can see that inventory went up. Okay, fair enough. Because I was building up inventory because it's a new product that we're going to sell in the February. In the February, we actually had a beginning balance, and we purchased a little bit more, and we started selling as I would expect on this item. So it looks pretty okay. But on the top of this, I can actually also see some KPIs on this specific cost object, how this cost object actually performs. So now I can see an inventory turn, and I can see that the current inventory turn is 1.84, and I can see that currently that is actually above my goal with 1.45. I don't have big expectations in my company here. But these two goals for inventory turn and inventory accuracy can actually be set up in the inventory accounting parameters. So new fields that has been added in AX, Dynamics AX. Inventory accuracy, I can see here that I'm really not doing that great because my inventory accuracy is only at 89%, and my company level is that I want to be at 98% inventory accuracy. And I can quickly go up and see why did we landed there is simply that we have actually disposed from inventory 15 pieces. This is, again, now suddenly the documents that you are posting actually gets an effect on your system from a costing perspective. And dispose means really journals. If you dispose anything via journals, so please don't post all these positive journals I keep seeing. Either you procure an item or you manufacture them. I really hate the positive journals. So I know when third-party systems always integrate, they put stuff into a journal instead of the purchase order through that flow because it's much easier. But now we are classifying based on the document types in the statement what has occurred. This is the best tool I have. So if you really go through journals, please go in and update the way the statement classifies the stuff. Because otherwise, the whole statement framework goes to a not usable for the customer. So because I dispose 15 pieces in a counting journal in this case, I can see, and it will only use the 15 for counting journals for actually the inventory accuracy in this case. This is the cost object. So this, right now, I can do it both. If you saw, I can do it when I'm standing on the item, or I can go into cost object and do the same. So I can do it at multiple cost object levels, so to speak. Did you get? I can show you that. So right now it's pretty easy because I only have one cost object below the product. But if I go here standing on the product, I can actually also click here directly, and then I will see it for all the cost objects related to that released product.
Could you do it for a site or a warehouse and then drill down to the detail?
Valid point, not in AX, because this is where we come into that, is this supposed to be in AX or out of AX? But yes, valid point, but not now. You can build this yourself if you want, because everything is there. The cache is there to do it. But we want to take another direction, really, on this. So I don't want to waste time going back to my slide here. So I'll just continue into manufacturing accounting. So this was really what we did on inventory accounting, at least some of it. There is much more. We have changed the UI on, but this was the most critical ones I want to actually enphase. If we go directly into manufacturing, what I want to enphase on the manufacturing side that we have really been working on from a UI perspective, and hopefully I can get my customization workspace up again. You can see here on the workspace, I have on the job order costing, I can now have the top 10 production variances that has occurred. And when I say production variances, it actually applies not only to standard cost, but also to actual cost. Because you also have production variances when you're doing actual cost. The only difference is that in actual cost, you actually accumulate it into inventory. When you're doing standard cost, it is an expense variance. That's really the biggest difference. But you still want to know how good performant you are in your production when you're doing actual costing. So you will see here the top 10 production variances. And if you want to know it not only by production order number, because that might be useful, but you can also say I want to use it by produced item name, and then it will actually summarize the variances on production orders based on the different items that actually has it. So you can find, oh, this item has always production variance and always shoes, so let's do some more investigation on that one differently. If we go back to the production order, it also works for batch order. The only thing that is not part of this is lean. Lean is not part, and that's why I've called it job order costing in the top here, that it only works when you're doing job order costing, mean production order or batch order. That's where I want to investigate a production order here. It's not the biggest variance, but this is the one I want to investigate, so I simply click it. Oh, sorry, and it actually goes through to the specific production order. And again, if you go under Manage Cost, you will see here that we have actually redesigned the capabilities for you to go and view on the production order. I won't go through all of them in this session. Sorry. But the one I want to show is really View Cost Comparison, which is a new functionality in Microsoft Dynamics AX. I click it, and the system will actually open up two charts. What the system shows here is a chart that shows the total cost comparison for the production order and the unit cost comparison. Because again, depending on the production order, it might have a lot of fixed cost in it, and you did a very small production order. Of course, the cost will explode because of the lot size. Or if you look at, and you don't have that, you might want to look at the total order. It really depends on the case here, so to speak. If you look at this here, we have now active. Before you could actually go in AX 2012, you could actually go in and look at the comparison between estimated and realized cost. But first of all, you will have to look at all the lines to do it. And you really miss the active cost, because this is what I'm supposed to look at against. And what we're trying to do now is to say, we get the active cost in and show it by manufacturing, material, and indirect cost. Then we have the estimated cost and the realized cost. So what we now call is that between the active and the estimate, we have what we call the planning variance. And what is the planning variance? The planning variance is really where the production planner takes a firm decision not to use the standard material on the BOM or a resource because it could be down, but he needs to pick either a more or less expensive resource or material. So this is a variance that is done by the planning. So now we can actually see how effective are our planners, because are they really the cause of our production variances? Or is it when we're looking against estimated, against realized, which is actually the production floor, to see how good are they actually producing at the estimated BOM and route? So this is really powerful for us to use.
This is the latest active cost.
The latest active cost, yes.
It's not date to it. So if I'm going back into a production order which was a month ago, and the active cost has been updated since, you're still looking at the latest one, not the date of the production order.
It looks, no, the active cost of the date of the production order is used. We have the date in the cache table, because all of this is actually cached. And because all of this is these tables, you can actually also create data entities and export it to Excel if you want to work with it out of AX later on. We don't have built that capability in, but it's actually possible to do. One of the cool things is, again, you can actually zoom in here, and again, see here, if you look at the total variance, and say, okay, again, I want to drill in and understand what's the cause of my total variance on this production order. And I can figure out if I have a bad planning or planner in my system or in my company, or if it's actually my production flow that I should go and actually knock in the head and say, please produce at the estimated price. And again, I can also just reset everything and go back. So it's pretty powerful to give you a fast overview of this specific production order. And it's definitely better than going in and look at a BOM line of 200 lines and see what causes the difference, or export active price to Excel and then put all the realized and stuff like that. The biggest downside right now with this is that when you re-estimate the production order in AX, we only have the latest estimated cost in the system. So I don't have versioning on the estimation. So if you're regularly doing re-estimation, it doesn't work for you, because the last estimate price will be effective for the whole production quantity. So if you do that, this feature, you should only look at active versus realized and not at the difference between the planning and the Indian in that case. Unless you, of course, go in and put a customization in and actually do the versioning of your estimate. But unfortunately, we didn't have time for that. So on the workspace, you also have a very fast overview of your estimated production and your realized to see how good your production flow is doing in this period. So you can also see if something goes wrong in the overall. Another thing you can also do in the production orders, if I go back, is that you can actually also see, and I need to find the right production order, I think it was this one. And I have actually something called a production WIP statement. So similar to the inventory statement of a cost object, I can actually look at a WIP statement of my production order. So here I can actually see the beginning balance of my WIP on this production order. I can see the net conversion cost added in the current period of February. I can see it by material, manufacturing cost, outsourcing cost, or indirect cost. I can see how much I've actually in this period left the WIP on this production order. And I can see if that has actually caused any variances. But today, this will only occur when you actually end the production order. And I can see the ending balance of this specific production order right now in my WIP. And again, you can also get a graph which will actually showcase over time how did we actually produce this item. And again, this could be a good way to find out if something went wrong on the production order. And let's say you have long-running production orders that run months, and then you have 3 shifts that works on this. And you need to figure out, because in my old company, we introduced scanners, and often what we saw was that they didn't really pay attention where the cursor were when they were actually scanning labels and stuff like that. So suddenly quantities of millions went into the report as finished quantity. This can actually be found by looking at the graph much faster than going through all the transactions posted, because suddenly you will see a graph that in the cost. And then you know exactly the date, and then you can go in and find the transaction, because now you know the date you're searching for, at least when you go into the transactions mode. This is one production order only. What?
What if you want to get this across for one item across a period of time? Is there a way to do that?
Yes, Power BI. Which I will come to, because we will support you in doing these, but it's not being native in AX then. Sorry. Let me see my time. Ooh, boy. So this was manufacturing accounting. And if we go back to the workspaces, time really flies. So on the workspace, what do we have? We have 2 workspaces. We have cost administration and cost analyzers. This is my cost administration workspace. This is the one where I will go in on a, let's say, daily basis in the morning and see what has been happening in my system. I have tiles that shows me if somebody has created new products. Because again, I'm not necessarily notified, but I will be notified by this little icon here telling me you have so many items that actually are missing configuration, which could be item model group, dimension groups, cost groups, and so on. So I need to go and actually prepare these items before they can actually go into production or use in the company. The same is I can actually see if items are missing an active cost, which is really important, especially for standard cost, but also in my mind for actual cost. Every item must have an active cost in a costing version, period. I have some information cards here. They don't really allow you to do stuff, but you will see when you last run your inventory close, if you're doing actual cost. You can also get a quick link and go in and actually look at the records of your closing and perform a closing. But this action button here doesn't actually perform the closing, it just lets you go to the form. The same if you're doing lean and backflow costing, you have the same information to know when did you last run that job. Then we have this data refresh status. So similar to Excel, when you refresh data, all of this information that we're showing in the workspace are working on a dataset cache. And to give the user an idea of when it was actually last updated, so he knows when he's looking and working with his data, I will show this with the exact date and time when the last time. And as a special feature, we also got the data cache team to actually allow that if you want, you can actually go in and say, for this cache itself, users are allowed to manually refresh. And I've done that in the system, and you will do that in the data cache configuration. I don't have time to go in and show you that. But you will go in there and click on Allow Manual Refresh. And then you will see that this little stuff here gets active. And this means that a cost controller can actually sit in the morning and say, I need the newest information, not the one that was running during the night, but I want the newest information. He clicks it, and it will immediately update. And whenever it's done with the update, it also refreshes the whole workspace. Then we have a few pending and work statements. I will go directly here to my inventory statements and reconciliation, which is not really truly a list. But what it really is that it actually shows me how my current inventories are flowing and performing in the current period. So here I will suddenly see for the whole company what was my beginning inventory in February when I started, and what is happening in the current period. And again, what you can see is, you can see your flow, and hopefully you will be able to always to see that my consumed material cost is flowing as my consumed material cost over in WIP. It credits and it debits. And again, my manufacturer cost credits the WIP and it flows into my inventory in the period. So now you have actually, based on classification, understanding of how is your inventory moving in the current period. And again, you can also change the period because, again, the workspace allows you to change the period you want to work with. And just to show you again a little bit about the speed we are talking about, let's put 11 in here. Everything is cached. So all of these statement balances are actually cached per date, per product, per something in a record. So this means I can, in very fast, go in and read them. And it's only updating incrementally when it's updated. We have built a lot of technology into this data refreshing, so it actually works very, very, very fast. I'll just change it back again. So don't be scared about, oh yes, he can show that with a little limited data set. It really doesn't matter how much data you have, because everything here works on a cache, which is one record depending on, it doesn't matter how many inventories you're creating in your company. Everything here is working in one transaction per day only. Anyway. Reconciliation. Just here on the variances. So again, you see some little icons here on the statements. And the truth is here, when you're doing standard cost, as part of the manufacturing cost of your WIP, the outcome is also variances. So you will only see variances down here, of course, if you're doing standard cost. And if you're doing standard cost, you don't want to, and you want to quickly know which variances occur, you can see that we actually have a link to a report. So you can open up the variance report directly from the statement here. But you can actually also get a graph to open up. I will click it and it will open up. I don't know, it's always slow in the first time here. Sorry. And it will open up a standard cost variance graph here, and you can see which type of variances has occurred in the current period.
Are you using the same technology for inventory closing, the caching technology?
No, it doesn't work for the closing. And because I click twice, close it twice. So you also have some fast links here with some icons, which will allow you to get more insight into the different information. Reconciliation will now happen at a granular level, which means the total level between the inventory subledger and to the general ledger. And again, you don't have to specify any accounts because I already specified it in my parameters that I showed when we did the master data. So the system already knows which accounts in finance match my subledger. And again, if you have a difference, we have these potential conflict reports that you can open. And now when you open it up from the workspace here, it actually already knows which dates that you want to run for. It already knows which accounts you want to run for. So it just executes the report by clicking here. Before we go to, I need to be hurry here. I just briefly want to show you the second workspace that we have before we go to the Power BI story. So cost analysis workspace is working as a more periodically workspace that the cost controller will use for analyzing some performance of the company. So first of all, we have an inventory turn overall for the company, how we are doing versus our goal. We have the inventory accuracy overall for the company. And again, I can see when my cash data is updated, so I know the data I'm looking at, how fresh they are. Then we have inventory KPIs. We have low inventory turn for the current calendar month. And this is really because of performance. So these lists here will not work based on filtering on the data on the workspace. Because for performance of listing all of these, we would have to fix them periodically. So now they will be always by current calendar and previous calendar. But what I can see is I really have some cost objects that are performing bad in my company. And I can also say that I don't want to list, because I can actually limit the list here and say I only care if the inventory balance is above a certain threshold. So if I say I don't even care that I have low inventory turn on items, that really doesn't have any value, because normally in AX still we have the products forever in the system. We cannot discommission an item as such. So even though that there is no balance of inventory, therefore it has no inventory turn, they will show up in the lists and they will take time to load. So we can actually pre-filter to say everything that is below 10,000, I will never even show it up in this list. I only want to show the one that is important for me to work with. So the higher inventory balance and lower turn is definitely the one I want to take action on. And again, if you click here, you can immediately go into the cost object itself and actually see how this product is performing. And here we can actually see that, yes, if we're looking at February period, we can see that actually nothing has happened. We can even see over the last 6 months that absolutely nothing has happened. So it might be a good idea to go in from an accounting perspective, either to go to the salespeople and say, should we make a campaign on this? Or is it really so obsolete that I actually need to write it down? Because then the value of this product is not currently what it is, I guess, in my company. So again, new fast information capabilities. You can also see here how the inventory and WIP has progressed over 6 months. And that's really it. And you have, of course, links for doing analytic works out here as well. And we're close to running out. If we go back to the workspace here, cost administration. Come on. Let's go to the Power BI. So this is the new thing of everything in AX. Everybody talks about the Power BI. So we have a control that you can insert into the workspaces that allow you to insert Power BI controls. You need a data set that you can upload to the Power BI. And as soon as you've created a workspace, or they call it a dashboard, we call it a workspace. You have a dashboard, you can actually insert that control into your workspace. Right now, the only filtering capability that we have is that it will work on the company level. So I will export all inventories or all legal entities to Power BI. And when you then import it in and put the control in, the legal entity will actually work as a filter. So it will filter based on the legal entity. How does it work? Well, once you have this in here, you can actually click up here and you will open up. And performance is probably not that great that it would be. And then it comes up with a warning, of course, which is brilliant. It worked yesterday fine. Let me see why it does that. It works anyway. I don't know why it came up. And it works a little bit slow. And the only reason why it is a little bit slow on my PC here is really that everybody in Microsoft right now needs to test with the same test account. And that means we have uploaded, 400 different data sets and created 400 different dashboards in Power BI under the same user, which, of course, will never happen in the real life. So right now, it is not as fast as I would like to demo here. But this is only because we're using one single account for us to test with. So it works through the whole product phase. But anyway, you go simply in here, and then you will see all of the chart components within this dashboard. So the tiles are selected here was a cost management dashboard, and we will have a cost management dashboard in Power BI after we have RTW'd, when the Power BI will actually upload that to their marketplace. So there will be a cost management dashboard available in Power BI. And you will simply have to go and click that one, and then it will eventually show all the different charts that we have added to this dashboard in Power BI. And then you simply go in here and click, and you say OK, and then it will insert it into the workspace in AX. And right now it is simply just because of performance, and also I'm working on a machine in Denmark. So it works. It just works not on my machine right now for performance reasons. So what will we ship in Power BI? So this is, again, if I click the icon, which you saw, I click this icon here, then it actually opened up Power BI. So if I want to read more context of that specific information of the tile, the chart, I click it in the UI in AX, and it automatically opens up Power BI, where that chart control is coming from. And I will look at the reporting page in Power BI. And these are the reporting pages that we are planning to ship. The data in them is not as I would like them right now, because we're still in the testing phase with the data set. But the whole idea is that you will have, during the night, or multiple times a day, you will have an OData feed that are actually transferring data to the Power BI database. And it will then update back into AX. So it will run as a continuous flow of data from AX to the Power BI and updating the Power BI chart within AX. The only caveat for cost management is that we work on a data set cache. We cannot load all inventories per all products cross dimensions to the Power BI. It's simply too much data. So what we are now transferring for cost management to Power BI is the cache data at a aggregated level. So it means that it is not real time. It has to be based on the cache that we have built in AX that we are transferring to the Power BI. So it is not going to be real-time data. There is latency in this. Just so I don't come and people come say afterwards when we ship and say, oh, this is not real time. No, the inventory in Power BI will not be real time. It will be depending on how often you run the cache in AX to update the caches of inventory and WIP, and then how often you're running the Power BI data collector, so to speak, I will call it. But anyway, you will be able to create as many charts as you like over here in Power BI that shows inventory, ending balance by resource group, which is the item groups, or per site, or you can make a graph in countries and say, or in sites and say, oh, in which sites are my inventory stored and per item group. So the visualization is really up to the end user. And let me see here, edit report. So what we will do is that we are simply shipping, because this is really what Microsoft will do for the future, is really we ship a predefined content pack with predefined charts, but it's really difficult to know exactly how you want it to look. So again, we are not really putting effort in building the nicest reporting pages and dashboards. This is really up to the end user to do, because this is really what the end user can do. This is the whole benefit of Power BI that is now put into the hands of the end user. So our goal is to say, provide the data, and these are really all the measurements out here that we are providing in the content pack. And we are right now also putting dimensions in as legal entities, ledgers, and also sites in. And of course also the KPI goals that you can put into the parameter form, so you can also compare against the goals in Power BI. And you can also, of course, filter based on fiscal calendars. So the benefit of Power BI is really that I will only provide you the opportunities to build the visualization. And then it's up for the end users and the partners to really build the end user look. And by that, I think we managed even to stop on time, more or less. And then we have questions. Yes?
I can see that you've really extended, the way that cost accounting uses the data.
Yes.
What about beefing up the functionality? Including landing costs, landing charges on your transport orders, pulling all your, materials, labour costs all the way up
Yes, yes, and yes. So this is exactly why cost accounting was ripped out. So we took a decision to management, and I came to management with the decision. Either we upgrade both systems, the old inventory and production. We don't even call it cost management. We just update every single form, and we do the same with cost accounting, and that's what you get. You get it into the new client, and it will probably look. I don't have time to even build visualizations that we have done. You'll just get it the cheapest way as possible, and this is what you get. Or we decommission cost accounting module because it is not working the way we will. It will not bring us anywhere forward. Decommission it. At that point of time, AX, the new AX, Microsoft Dynamics AX, I'm not allowed to say new AX, was only supposed to be for new customers at that point of time. It's a year ago, or 1.5 years ago. So, and nobody will ever go live on cost accounting anyway to start with. So it was not important. So if we can build the cost management nice, I would put my bet there. So, and we agreed on that. So cost accounting was ripped out, and now we're rebuilding cost accounting. And what we're really doing is we're building a cost accounting framework that after we have done cost control and sales control, which is what we will do in the first release of that module, can always be extended to do inventory control and production control. Because I have a cost object, I have my cost entries, I have an allocation rule. It doesn't matter if it's inventory control, cost center control, or sales control. All of this will actually play together. And my cost elements will suddenly be main accounts or products or resources of labor. I will have everything built into one common form. So now we're building a new cost accounting module that actually will be the future of costing when we evolve it. So yes, and then it's much easier to build consignment stock, which we're talking about, cost on transfers, because there is no relation between inventory and costing anymore at that point of time. Actually, we will even build it as a service. The whole cost accounting module is right now designed as a workload, as service. It is not dependent on any in AX. Everything works between data providers. It can be an external provider into AX, or it can be an AX provider. We will, of course, ship out of the box all the AX providers of data. But the new cost accounting module will actually work not only with ledger measurements, but also with sales orders measurements. It will also work with costing versions, so I can actually budget. It will actually also get data from ledger budget, demand forecast, and it will also get data from, to start with, these 4 places. To start with, just to build the sales control, actually. So now you will, in cost accounting in the new one, you will be able to get revenue, COGS, and indirect cost to see which products and customers are most profitable. So the first release we plan within the next update. So I don't have the dates yet, if it's 6 or 8 months. But I actually have a session about that roadmap tomorrow in a roundtable where I will discuss it. I will also demo some of the stuff because we actually have already the first pieces working in that, because we've been working for the last 2 months with a few engineers to actually build that framework. Yes?
Is there a kind of program to join the cost accounting?
There is a tab program. I have a feedback group, so if you come tomorrow, you can actually sign up. And right now, I expect that I hope in April, but it will probably be in May, I will do a workshop in Denmark. That's my plan now. Only for doing cost accounting. Because the CTP events are great, but I never get the cost accounting people to attend. So I want to have, for my feature, and this is what we are going for as well, that we will do actually these events for each of the topics that we are working on, because we want to get much more feedback. But also another thing is, if you go to the tab program of cost accounting, a new cool stuff in LCS is that you will actually be able to see the bills that we are doing every 14 days, and then test and see incrementally how cost accounting evolves. So this is also what we're doing already now with 2 customers. We're actually having a meeting every 14 days with them and showcase what we are doing, what we have been doing, and also planning to do. And they can actually, after this week, they will be able to actually deploy a build and actually do test it themselves on that. Other questions?
You invested a lot in the in-memory calculations and all the reporting. Are you going to rewrite or enhance the capabilities of inventory calc and closing based on those technologies?
Yes.
Because, if you can do that, like in millions of transactions, you can in-memory like 5
Yes, there's two things that we have. One thing is, the first rule is there will never be any updates. The new cost accounting module will never allow you to update a record, period. This is one of the single most cost thing we have in the closing is that we are updating records. It's insane when you're updating millions and millions of records. 2, when we do periodic weighted average, there will be absolutely no relationship between the transactions. It is going to be a true periodic weighted average. We made it in 2012, actually in NX 2009 with these sum transactions. We made the best attempt we could do with the current data architecture to create a sum transaction of all the receipts in a period and calculate an average. That was the best we could do. But we will create complete new closing and new methods of costing. The way that it's not new methods because periodic weighted average is periodic weighted average. But they will work completely new. And we will have a true periodic FIFO as well. And when we get there, because already now the module is that we have cost accounting ledgers in the new module, and they are not dependent on legal entities. So you can actually do as many cost accounting ledgers per legal entity, or you can even put data from multiple legal entities into one cost accounting ledger. So that will also drive that you can actually do for inventory, you can actually do dual inventory, because for the same legal entity, you create 2 cost accounting ledgers and you will apply 2 different valuation methods of inventory.
So in this case, with general ledger, the inventory, you can have 2 values?
Yes.
Like the FIFO and the average cost?
Or FIFO standard cost, or yes. Yes, exactly. So all of this is already, it's not in the first, but the first release we're building the whole foundation. So the foundation we're building right now is that if I'm a cost controller responsible for cost centers in multi-legal entities, I will be able to see all my cost centers and their actual versus budgeting cross the legal entities in a common currency, because the cost accounting ledger will have a currency as well, an exchange rate table as well. So I can put it into a common currency and see if my cost centers cross the legal entities without waiting for consolidation in finance, for instance. So all of this framework is built, but doing inventory on top of that afterwards is not the biggest world. Hopefully, what I will show tomorrow is that we will do phases of this, because we cannot do it in one. But it will do in phases. But yeah.
It is one of the most important and a lot of transactions of base customers.
Yes. Yes, I completely agree and acknowledge it. And that's also why we are getting there. And once we have that separation, it is much easier to add consignment, because there is really no cost entry when you do consignment. It's just keep it in inventory. I don't care about it. You can do an inventory item that actually is, oh, in this case, I want to use it as an inventory asset in production, but now I purchase it just for the use of my own company. That means it is expensed. So the same item can behave both as inventory asset and non-inventory asset. Or I can actually put an item in my inventory because I need it there. Let's say I bought a pallet of toilet paper. I put it there in inventory. I need to know where it is, but it's an expense item. But my registration and receiving of that pallet of inventory, toilet paper, can still happen, but it's just not recognized as inventory asset because now we're completely separate. All of that will then automatically come. Right now, we will have to develop shitty code, performance-wise, to cover all of these scenarios. Just by making the separation, we get we get most of it for free, actually. And then we can code on the documents to say, what are this item and this purchase order going to be used for? And then everybody can read the document and understand how should I create transaction based on this.
Do you plan for also the legacy path? Because currently the customer is going to be in the wrong way. How it's going to be migrated in the live system? Do that? Because that also became a challenge after that. You understand?
I understand. And right now I have to say, I know it's going to be on my list. Right now I need to build a module that works first. Then I need to figure out how we can migrate to it. But first of all, I need to have the whole data model built and actually make sure that it actually works. And then we need to figure out how we migrate data. But yes, of course there will be some sort of migration. I cannot tell you what it will be yet. It's not right now. It's in a backlog that we have to do it. I have not used 5 minutes to think about how to do it yet. Okay, thank you all. Hope you enjoyed the session.